What's good, folks? It's your boy Isaac, aka Polo, aka Young Polo, back with another edition of Polo Talk Sports. Now, this is going to be Polo's Crazy Takes Jordan vs. Kobe Hoop Debate Part 2, and I'm going to just get right into it. So, like I said in the last video, I mentioned Jordan's supporting cast, and I do think Jordan is an all-time great player. I have him ranked number 2 behind Kobe, even though I know Kobe isn't in some people's top 5. This is the reason I think Kobe is the greatest ever, because all championships are not created equal, and I already ran through the supporting cast of the Bulls dynasty in the 90s, and I'm going to compare them now to Kobe's supporting cast in 2008, 9, and 10, which is the essence of the argument. Obviously, back-to-back championships, 2009 and 10, and they did lose in 2008 to the Big Three Celtics, where they were completely outmatched, but that's besides the point. All right, so let me get right into it. 2008, some of the supporting cast, the role players: Lamar Odom averaged 14, 10, and 3. Kwame Brown, whose stats are irrelevant, didn't make the video. Andrew Bynum's stats were irrelevant that year, didn't make the video. Derek Fisher averaged 11 points, 3 assists. Paul Gasol, which was essentially the Robin to Kobe's Batman, averaged 18 points and 8 assists. Now, Paul Gasol is going to be an emphasis of this video just because he was the second best player. He was essentially Kobe's Pippen. And I just don't think he's the level of player that Pippen was. I don't even think he was the level of player that Dennis Rodman was, if we're being honest. And those are two players that had significant roles in Jordan's finals runs with the Bulls. Now, Luke Walton, Trevor Ariza, Jordan Farmer also were like role players that had a significant role in those Lakers championships, and their stats just weren't relevant enough to even make the video. 2009, Andrew Bynum averaged 14 points, 8 rebounds. Derek Fisher obviously was another important part. His stats weren't relevant enough to make the video either. Paul Gasol improved up to 19 points, 9 assists, which I guess is good, but for a second best player on a championship team, it's just really not that impressive, especially when you look at teams like the Golden State Warriors, the Miami Heat, even the San Antonio Spurs had players that had similar numbers, if not better, but multiple players in their roles would be just as good as Paul Gasol was in his role to winning those championships with the Lakers. In 2010, Lamar Odom averaged 11 points, 10 assists. They got Metta World Peace this year, 11 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. Gasol, 18 points and 11 assists. Bynum, 15 points, 8 rebounds. So obviously, a couple players did average double-digit scoring that season: 11, 11, 18 by Gasol and 15 by Bynum. But, these players, they're role players. And a big point of emphasis of this video is that without Kobe, I don't think anyone can make the argument that this Lakers team would be any good if they make the playoffs. They're definitely a bottom seed in their first round and out. Whereas in the case of Jordan, we can play the same thing, but it's not a hypothetical. He actually did leave the Bulls, and in '94, the year after the Jordan left, the Bulls were a game away from going back to the NBA Finals. So in essence, they almost repeated their success that they had with Jordan without him. And I don't get how people just look past this part. Literally, their best player that they give all the credit to left them, and they were back in the conference finals. This would have never been the case with the 2008, 9, and 10 Lakers team. Like, look at the numbers that these players are putting up. You could improve maybe a few points here and there, a few rebounds here and there, but this team still isn't very good without Kobe, essentially. All right, next I'm going to get into the postseason numbers during the 2008, 9, and 10 Lakers championship runs with Kobe. But let's just mention his stats during this time, because I gave you the stats of all the role players. Let me compare it to Kobe. So Kobe was averaging 28, 5, and 6 essentially every year in those regular seasons: 2008, 2009, and 2010. 28 points, 5 rebounds, six assists, or vice versa, which he would always average around 5 to 6 rebounds and assists. Now let's get into the playoffs. So Kobe was obviously averaging 36 and 6, so his points per game production improved a little bit. He averaged 2 steals a game in the playoffs during 2008, 9, and 10, just about. And let's get into Paul Gasol's numbers. So 2008, 17, 9, and 4, and also about 2 blocks a game. 2009, 18, 11, and 2.5 assists a game. So let's just round it up to three. 2010, 18, 11, and three assists a game, and also about 2 blocks during all those years. So essentially, what the Lakers really were was a team of semi-skilled offensive players that were all very good on the defensive end. So their team was really built around defense. In comparison to the Bulls, he had Tony Kukoc, which was a player they picked up along the dynasty during those runs, which was a very good shooter, very skilled offensive player. They had Steve Kerr, which was almost the first, if not one of the first 3 point specialists in the league to space the floor, to give the Jordan the space to operate. And they had Scottie Pippen, which was one of the first, if not the first, point forwards who could really do everything on the offensive end. He wasn't a great 3 point shooter, but he was probably just as good, if not a better 3 point shooter as Jordan. And, offensively, he could do everything else, offensive rebounds, mid-range games. He created for others a lot better than Jordan. So he had players that were not only just as good, if not almost as good as him on the defensive end, but he had players on the offensive end that allowed him to operate essentially stress free and just be able to score and not worry about anything else, because all the other moving parts did a lot of those things for him. Whereas Kobe had Derek Fisher, which I guess he's a good point guard, but he never averaged even close to double digit assists. He was really just the point guard by namesake. Kobe really was the point in all of these playoff runs, especially. Now we have Lamar Odom, 2008, 9, and 10. Again, these are postseason numbers: 14, 10, and 3, 12, 9, and 2, 11, 10, and 3. And then we had Derek Fisher in 2008, who played a significant role. He averaged 10, 2, and 2, and also 2 steals. So, again, mostly a help on the defensive end, if anything. And then in 2009, we had Trevor Ariza average 11, 4, and 2. Which again, not very impressive, but he was somewhat of a force on the defensive end, as most of these role players are. And then Metta World Peace in 2010 finals, obviously he hit the infamous shot, but he was averaging 11, 4, and 3 during those finals, and also just under 2 steals. So again, most of these players that contributed to the finals runs in 2008 to 2010 were really just a force on the defensive end. And that being said, Kobe was the best defender of all of them, but they were just were there to make essentially a defensive-led team with a dominant scorer in Kobe Bryant, which I believe without the dominant scorer, you can't have that success. Whereas the Bulls teams had a bunch of two-way players that were some historically great, like Rodman and Pippen, on both ends of the floor, but other players that did their role very well and could also help on the defensive and offensive end, which was help that I don't think Kobe had during the 2008 to 10 finals runs. Now, let me break down some stats. Obviously, MJ's stats overall in his career were they're better than Kobe's. Like, I'm just going to be real. But if it was all about stats, then either Kareem or Bill Russell would be considered the GOAT, because Bill Russell, you could say, when it comes to hardware, definitely he's in first place. And Kareem, when it comes to hardware and accolades, MVPs, things of that nature's finals, you could say Kareem is also the GOAT, but nobody says that. Or some people will have an argument for Kareem, but I'll just get right into it. Obviously, Jordan had 14 All-Star game appearances. He was Rookie of the Year, 5 MVPs. He had a Defensive Player of the Year, 6 rings, 6 Finals MVPs, 3-time All-Star Game MVP, 11-time All-NBA, 9-time All-Defense. Now, in comparison, Kobe, whose numbers aren't too far off, but if you, by numbers alone, Jordan's numbers are better. But Kobe was an 18-time All-Star, All-Rookie Team, 5 championships, 2-time scoring title, 15-time All-NBA, 12-time All-Defense, 4-time All-Star Game MVP, and only 2 Finals MVPs. And I think I missed out on Jordan's scoring. He had how many scoring titles? He had 10 scoring titles, which is more impressive than Kobe's too. But in terms of MVPs, this will probably be a later video. I think Kobe was snubbed of so many MVPs. Dirk having 2, Steve Nash having 2. That's just, neither one of these players were ever at the level Kobe was, even though Dirk did win his finals with the Mavericks in, 2011 or 12, I believe, which is another impressive finals run. I don't think there's any argument to make that Dirk is a top 10 player and Kobe is set in stone as at least that. So this really concludes my video. Let me know what you think. I do believe Kobe is better than Jordan for the reasons that I listed just now before you. Not all championships are created equal, and that's all.